1.5 years ago, almost to the day, I released a podcast episode in which I announced to the world that I was coming off of my antidepressants. And this is the update. This is the update, everyone. Because I have truthfully spent more than a year of my life in recent times, the last year of my life, we could say, struggling, suffering, and going through the most, to be honest, with my mental health, which has brought me to record this episode today, because I'm not really here to explain myself and to give you the update because I feel like I owe it to you. But I think that there's some valuable lessons and some juicy nuggets that I've picked up through this experience of suffering, elected suffering, that I think is worthy of sharing with you guys. As we know, I'm not going to bore you with rehashing what you may or may not know, but I went to Sri Lanka a year and a half ago. I did my yoga teacher training, and in that process came off my antidepressants, thought that I'd found the higher power, and I was really connected to myself, very grounded. It felt like a safe space to venture into the unknown again by coming off my antidepressants. But subsequently, I have had a really tough time because, truth be told, my life is not a yogashala in Sri Lanka. My life is life in Cape Town. So as I acclimatized to my life back here, my mental health started deteriorating. Some could say that I was plotting my own demise. I was calculating how I could take a very long walk off an extremely short pier, as they say. I generally just had a lack of passion for life. Everything, if I could describe it to you, just felt like everything was kind of grayed out. I was, as you can imagine, based on this description, depressed. And I have been struggling with depression without even realizing it for the last year and a half or so. It impacted my relationships, namely my relationship with Aaron took a huge blow over this period. I would say possibly even with some of my friendships, it led to me isolating a lot and just generally not having a great time. And I know life's not all about having good times, but life is also such a precious gift that I don't think it should also be about making things harder for yourself than what they need to be. So let us discuss the learnings that I have determined. What brings me behind the mic today is to unpack further this idea of elected suffering. And please, guys, this is as it applies to the context of this podcast. I would say in this instance, elected suffering equates to me not taking medication to help balance whatever chemicals in my brain need to be balanced in order for me to have a quality of life that allows me to just enjoy my existence. Just a decent, like a baseline quality of life, okay? I think another good example of something like this could be maybe if you're stuck in a job or if you're electing to be in a job that you absolutely hate. I have also been there. I have also been in a job that I hated for a very long time, and I felt like I had I felt like I couldn't figure my way out of it. Obviously, you always have a choice, and I was aware that I was choosing to be there. But this is an example. These are examples of elected suffering as far as I would describe it for the sake of this podcast. And I think that you will know what this applies to in your life. Maybe something's coming up for you as I'm speaking. That's an example of some space in which you are electing to suffer unnecessarily. I think our mind gives us clues as to what these things are. And I don't think we should overthink whatever might have popped up now. If nothing, great, good for you. I think that deep down inside, we know these things. We know where we are choosing difficulty, and we know where we are hurting ourselves, truthfully. There are things in life that we do that subject us to a little bit of suffering, if you want to call it that, a little bit of struggle, if you want to call it that are in our own best interests. Examples are training, exercising, trying to prepare yourself physically for a half marathon. You have to wake up early, you have to run, you're subjecting yourself to physical exertion. It's not an ideal situation. It might be challenging. That's a kind of suffering, if you will. Choosing to eat healthily, denying yourself things like burgers and cakes and all that kind of thing, some people would argue is also a form of suffering. Obviously, that is not exactly what I'm talking about in this podcast. I think I'm going to just trust that you guys can use your brains accordingly and apply this and whatever I'm sharing where appropriate. Okay, I understand that there are examples in life in which we need to put ourselves through discomfort in order to grow. The argument, the conversation, the point that I'm trying to deliver this whole podcast episode is not centered around those positive kind of struggles. This is around the stuff that we are electing to do to ourselves, that we are subjecting ourselves to voluntarily, that is not necessarily bringing out the best for us or in us. So that brings me to this idea of like suffering for the wrong reasons. How can we determine? How did I determine that I was suffering for the wrong reasons? Well, upon reflection, I would say that I chose this path because I wanted to prove something to people in my life. These people being Aaron. I remember having a conversation with him in Sri Lanka just before I did my yoga teacher training and just before I came off my antidepressants about this. I had some friends in my life that were talking to me about me being on antidepressants. At the time that I came off of them, it was also my yoga teacher that I felt like I needed to prove something to. And lastly on that list was me needing to prove something to myself, which I think puts things into context quite nicely. Truthfully, I'm not really quite sure why the people in my life had an opinion on what I was doing with my own body that arguably was only positive and only beneficial for me. There did seem to be a stigma around it, and I was challenged by a couple of the people in my life, in as much as they said to me that by being on these antidepressants, by being on this medication, I was not truly in touch with who I am, that I was not the most authentic version of myself because I was medicated. These kind of things, even though they are maybe not intended with malice, that maybe they're just like a passing comment for the person who said it, they are quite sticky, if that makes sense. They're almost like, blackjacks when you're walking in a field or you're walking in a field of grass, very South African reference, but those little black spiky seeds that kind of pick up in your clothing and you go home and you have to pick them all out of whatever you're wearing, that kind of thing. It's like a passing comment that maybe is not serious to the person who said it, and maybe the person who said it feels like they have some wisdom to impart, yet they can be quite damaging. So I will touch on the people who say things, who shouldn't say things, I think, who shouldn't volunteer information that is unsolicited and not asked for. That I will touch on in a later point. But these are the kind of things that were swirling around my brain at the time that I decided I should try and come off my antidepressants, because I had absorbed other people's opinions of the situation, and I felt like I had to prove myself to these people in my life. I think it's also important to highlight that sometimes when you feel that need to prove yourself to other people in your life, or you even entertaining the notion that someone else might know better for you than you do for yourself, it's like we have to be very careful of ending up in a situation like that. And I think that, at least for me, it was indicative of a lack of self-trust and also maybe a lack of self-acceptance and a lack of self-love, that I was willing to allow myself to be influenced in this way. Ultimately, what happened was I came off the antidepressants and I felt amazing. Let's just contextualize where I felt amazing. I felt amazing in a foreign country across the world, in a humid jungle environment, practicing yoga for hours a day, in isolation of the world, the real world, inverted commas, that I live in now, okay? I had found this sense of peace and really, really tried to hang on to it in coming back to Cape Town. Unfortunately, that was a ridiculous notion because obviously, unless I am maintaining the same practices and living the same lifestyle that I was living there, it would be virtually impossible for me to spend that much time regulating myself every single day, day in and day out, the way that I was in Sri Lanka. So a silly notion to try and apply what I'd learned there to the extreme that I had learned it and to the extreme that I was practicing it in Sri Lanka to my life in Cape Town. But what that meant was I fucking knew it. I knew that in order to just try and stay alive, literally, just to try and stay alive, that I was going to have to do so much work on myself, okay? And I had accepted that. I thought, cool, this is not a matter of like you not being able to remedy the situation being my mental health. It's a matter of you not being prepared to work hard enough at it. And you, baby cakes, need to work. You need to work and work and work and work. And eventually, if you work hard enough, only if you work hard enough, will you come out the other end and you'll be able to prove to yourself that all the suffering was worth it. And the suffering will eventually end. But you have to fucking suffer and you have to fucking work. Those are the two facts. The result of that is I turned healing into a part-time job. And last year at some point, I was doing, I'm not lying to you, like 5 different courses at the same time, or 5 different healing practices, intensive healing practices all at the same time. I was seeing my therapist once a week, and those sessions were really intense. I was applying everything that she had taught me into my daily life, writing and restructuring the way that I was living my life as well. On top of that, I was doing art of living courses. I was doing other spiritual courses with other teachers online at the same time as doing art of living. I also had women's circle that I was attending, which I still attend to this day, which was great. But, I was just doing the most. And in the process of so desperately trying to fix myself, I stopped listening to myself and I actually lost touch with myself. And the more that I pushed myself and the more that things weren't working out, the more that it felt like the healing was just taking long and that it wasn't going anywhere. It kind of drove me deeper and deeper into the sense of self-loathing because I felt like there was something wrong with me. Because I'm like, I'm literally doing everything that I can possibly do right now to heal because I'm so broken that I need to heal. And yeah, like just do more. You're not doing it right. You're not doing enough. What an exhausting way to live. And how obvious now in hindsight that was really not going to lead me anywhere positive. In fact, it kind of just drove me deeper into a place that was really bad. So it led me to this kind of epiphany, I've really taken a huge step back from this whole idea of healing. And it also makes me, it's made me really have to reevaluate how I engage with my podcast, because my podcast for the longest time has been about healing and it's about fixing and it's about being better and all this. And yeah, I have had to take a step back to reevaluate things because I don't know if I buy into that so much anymore. I definitely think that we have accountability to work on ourselves. But I also think that sometimes this idea of healing can really get in the way of self-acceptance and self-love, which is so ironic and is not at all what you think would be the case. But when you make healing your identity, you are aligning yourself with the idea that there's something wrong with you and something that needs fixing. And you kind of make yourself a project. Yeah, you make yourself a project and you just keep trying to change who you are, rather than pausing enough to really get to know who you are and to accept who you are and make peace with who you are and actually just fucking love who you are, which, by the way, is the antidote to suffering, I think, to a lot of our suffering. So yeah, in this process, I learned a lot about this idea, as I said earlier, of like proving yourself to people, but specifically proving yourself to people, okay, in general, bad idea, but proving myself to people that would never understand me Truly, would never understand where I'm coming from in a real and honest sense. It made me aware, it has made me aware that I have the responsibility to understand myself, to know my needs enough that I'm not outsourcing information on who I am and what I need from the people around me and from external sources. I've learned that I owe it to myself to be a loving and attentive custodian of myself, and that it's not always a good idea to open yourself up to other people's input. Like, I really have learned that I owe it to myself to look inwards and to just like really learn to hold yourself. I feel like even looking inwards implies that there's some like great task at hand that requires us to, I don't know, our brains to explode into the ether and connect with like, you know, God consciousness and divinity. All of that is all fine and well and dandy and amazing, but like, I don't think it even has to be that deep. I just think I owe it to myself to hold my own little hand and check in with my own little self and kiss the little back of my hand gently and really just lean into, in the most subtle and simple ways, what it is that I might need. And I can also tell you how, in my experience, if you don't know what it is that you need, and if you are sitting there confused, lost, and dazed, and looking like you don't have the answers, I'm telling you now, people will give you the answers for free without you asking. They'll fucking give you the answers, okay? And like, yeah, when I first left my psychiatrist appointment, so like, okay, backpedal story time, maybe. The whole time up until this year, up until like 2 months ago, back on the antidepressants now for 2 months, okay, great, sliving, thriving. Guys, and I'm telling you now, I'm fucking furious about it because I struggled for a year and a half. I'm like so upset about it, but we'll get to that. So up until recently, I had almost like self-medicated in that I had seen a GP. A GP had given me my prescription for Wellbutrin the first time. Thank God it worked out for me. I went off of the Wellbutrin. La 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 la. The long and the short of it is that eventually another GP prescribed that I go to a psychiatrist. She was like, this is above my pay grade. I can't give you the answers you seek. You need to see a psychiatrist. And I'm so glad that I actually did that. Going to see the psychiatrist, I think, an actual qualified medical professional, helped me. I said to her, like, I actually just want, I want a diagnosis. And don't come for me. Do not come for me. I don't care if that's not what you want. That is okay. You're entitled to that. You don't have to want what I want. I'm just expressing myself. I wanted a diagnosis because I knew something was up and I wanted help. I was just like, I need help. And I don't know if going back on antidepressants is the right thing, but I'm also struggling. Like, I'm really not doing okay. And yeah, she said to me, how would you feel about being medicated? And I said to her, fuck yeah, I'm really totally open for it. I'm open to it. Wellbutrin worked wonders for me the last time. And she said to me, yep, I think that you are depressed, among many other things she said to me. We also ran a bunch of blood tests. So I know for a fact that there's a lot of things that are like maybe secondary causes for depression that can be resolved, such as vitamin deficiencies or, you know, a bunch of other things. All of those markers of mine are healthy. I'm healthy in so many other capacities that it only leaves one kind of thing left, which is obviously there's something happening in my brain chemically, I guess. I don't know. I don't even know if I'm describing it correctly. I'm not a medical professional, but yeah, she said to me, would you consider being medicated? I said, hell yeah, let's do it. And after I went to this appointment, I chatted to a friend of mine, I think first and foremost. And I said to her, yeah, like I'm going to go back on antidepressants. And she said to me, how do you feel about it? And I said, you know, I actually feel perfectly fine with it. I feel quite happy about it. But for some reason, I felt nervous to tell Aaron. And I thought like, I don't know what he's going to think about it because he was also a proponent of me coming off of the antidepressants. And I thought, yeah, maybe he's going to think like I'm copping out. Maybe, I don't know. But I made a decision in that moment to not open the door for his opinion on what is best for me. And I said to myself, I'm going in with the information, with the knowledge of self, with the profound understanding of what is right for me, with conviction. And I'm saying to you, I'm going on antidepressants, case closed, door shut. I'm not asking your opinion on this. I know what is best for me. When I did that, let me tell you, any fear that I had of him rejecting this decision was like completely unfounded because of my own conviction of self and knowingness of what is best for myself, and saying it the way that I said it. He was literally like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. Best, like it sounds like it's the right thing to do. Amazing. Okay, stunning. So again, the point that I'm trying to make is that I think we really owe it to ourselves to truly understand what is best for ourselves. And if we don't know what that is, to sometimes actually like ask professionals about these things, like seek mentorship, unless you are asking for the input of the people around you and your community. But also tread lightly when doing so, because everyone has an opinion. And as they say, the age-old saying, opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one. Just know that at the end of the day, this is your life, and the decisions that you make impact only one person for the most part, or the only person that it really matters who it impacts is you. Okay. Take that with a pinch of salt. I'm obviously not saying do whatever the fuck you want, destroy people's lives around you, make whatever decisions you want. But when it comes to making decisions like, medicating yourself or not, or taking a job or not, or, the main person who it impacts is you, and the main person who's going to have to sit with that decision is you. This is a PSA for all of those people who are dishing out unsolicited advice. Please, just, guys, how brazen of you to share an uneducated opinion on someone else's life that can influence the decisions that they make. Pas op, asseblief, almal. Okay, pas op. Another learning that I got out of this experience was in my blind dedication to this healing and, proving, I, over time, started valorizing struggle and really glorifying the suffering, because it felt like I'm doing the right thing, and that, nothing worthwhile comes easily, kind of thing. Like I had to struggle, I had to suffer in order to come out the other side, in order to become the person that I need to be. And as I said earlier, like, I'm actually really upset about it. I'm quite angry about the fact that, and upset that I have wasted about a year of my life struggling, and a year and a half, like another 5 months stabilizing. It's crazy. And I get it. I know that it's like, oh, you didn't waste time, you've learned your lessons. That's fine. My perspective is that it was an unnecessary use of my time. And that's why I'm coming to you with these lessons on elected suffering. So how do we evaluate this elected suffering in our life and know if we are doing the right thing by going through it? What I came up with is the following. It's like 3 questions, or a 1.1, and then a 2. Okay. So the first question, is it leading you on a clear path to growth? On a clear path to growth. Is the suffering, the struggle that you've chosen, going to take you somewhere positive ultimately? Okay. In your vision, you're like, I'm doing this really difficult thing because it's a part of my plan to get somewhere in the future. That's question 1. Question 1.1, and this is an important one. It's an important clarifying question, and that is, can you feel that growth? Is it working? Look around. She looks around the room. Is it working? And I understand, fine, like we might have to give it some time to find out if it's working. We might have chosen something that's difficult with the vision that it's going to help us. That's with the vision that it will allow us to grow, okay? We have to give it some time to see, is this struggle, is this suffering working out to help me grow? And then the second thing that I think is really important, and like a big lesson for me going forward, I will apply this, is the question of how is this elected suffering impacting my perspective of life and my experience in my own life? Is it jeopardizing my quality of life? Is it jeopardizing my appreciation for being alive? Okay. Is it jeopardizing my appreciation for being alive, which in my opinion is the most important thing that we have, is an appreciation for being alive, an appreciation, a gratefulness, a gratitude for the life that we have, for this precious time that we have on this planet. If I think back to even the job that I had that I was so unhappy in, that really just like leaked out into my everyday existence. It poisoned so much and tainted so much of the way that I saw the world, of the way that I saw myself, of the way that I related to myself and the world around me. And it really just made life like a schlep. I was just like dragging my feet and really at a loss for finding joy in the day to day. And then the other obvious example, because I'm speaking to it as the opening of this podcast episode, is me going off my antidepressants in the pursuit of growth. After a year and a half being able to say, okay, that didn't work. Thanks goodness I had the capacity to reflect on that and make another change. But also, I wish that I had asked myself the question sooner of how is this impacting my quality of life? And it really was impacting my quality of life in a very negative way. So I say this to my future self, to my past self, and to you. If it's impacting you super negatively and it's dragging you down and it's making you feel like life is shit, let it go, man. Let it go. Don't try and be a hero. You do not need to be a hero. And this is not about taking the easy route. I'm not encouraging us to just do whatever suits us with little to no effort. What I'm saying is that it's about taking care of yourself. It's about taking care of myself, not taking the easy route. And it's about being compassionate with yourself. And self-compassion is so powerful. It is such an underrated tool that we can cultivate. You know, if I reflect on how I was feeling, I think the best way that I can articulate this idea of self-compassion is if I knew that a friend of mine was struggling the way that I was struggling, if I could know, and feel their feelings in that way, I would, without a second's hesitation, encourage them to make a change, to let go of the suffering, to do what they can to ease their suffering, to be kind to themselves, And it's like, imagine that you could clone yourself and that there were two of you on this planet, okay? And the one clone version of you was here as your custodian, as your caretaker, and as your protector. What would you, as the custodian of yourself, as the protector of yourself, as the caretaker of your spirit, of your well-being, allow? Like, what would you allow if you shifted the mindset of like punishing yourself into really caring for yourself, holding yourself? What would you allow to happen? What would you allow yourself to go through? Okay, I'm going to get all like ooey and gooey with you guys, but it's the truth. And that is that we don't know how much time we have left. Oi, we don't though. It's just the truth. I hate to be the one to remind you, but we really do not know how much time we have left alive, how much time we have left with our loved ones. And I think we really owe it to ourselves to, as much as possible, really nurture this idea, this feeling of enjoying being alive, of appreciating being alive. Appreciating being alive, I think, really begins with appreciating being in your own body and appreciating your own company. And like, you can't really appreciate your own company if you are bullying yourself into submission by forcing yourself into suffering because you think it's the right thing to do when it actually might not be the best thing for you. And an interesting thing about this like whole bullying of oneself and of absorbing external voices as your own and using those criticisms as an internal compass is that by bullying myself, I really damaged my relationship with myself. Damaging my relationship with myself damages my self-trust. By damaging my self-trust, I make it really hard to listen to myself. I don't really know, what it is that I'm feeling because I'm detached from that. I've created a rift almost within myself. And then when it's harder for you to listen to yourself and to be in touch with yourself, then it just makes it easier for you to bully yourself. So it's like this vicious cycle that's ongoing. So a couple of questions that I have for you in closing this podcast, are as follows. Where might you be electing suffering that is not serving you? What action could you take to ease your own suffering? Remembering that, I've watched it on the documentary Stutz. Go check it out on Netflix if you haven't. It's really good. But he speaks about the 3 tenets of reality being pain, constant work, and uncertainty. Those are the 3 fundamentals of being a human being. Those 3 things will always be there. Maybe all 3 at the same time. Maybe each of them really strong individually at various points in your life. They will be there all the time. It's the nature of our reality. I feel like knowing that these things are already baked in, guys, we can't avoid all suffering. But I think that we owe it to ourselves to not make life harder for ourselves than it needs to be. To really try and build in gentleness and softness with ourselves rather than punishing ourselves, which I think has become a cultural norm, this idea of punishing oneself, pushing oneself. So yeah, where might you be choosing the hard road unnecessarily? And where might you be able to choose kindness and gentleness, self-compassion in your life instead? Thank you so much for listening. This is Time for Us with Danny Wallace. I'm your host. Please will you share my podcast, spread it with the world, leave a comment, I don't know, show me some love. Yeah, thank you for listening. It's an honor and a privilege to sit here behind this microphone and in front of this camera and continue speaking to you as I have over the last couple of years. Thank you for being here. Sending you so much love. Thank you for making time for us.